Welcome to our noon edition of Arirang News. Here are the stories making the headlines at this hour. This morning, President Yoon made his first public remarks in regards to his ruling party's crushing defeat in the 22nd general election. In a cabinet meeting, the president said he would work closely with the incoming National Assembly to improve state affairs. Israel says it is planning painful retaliation against Iran for launching hundreds of drones and missiles against its territory over the weekend. But Israel's war cabinet says it will make sure not to cause an all-out war. Meanwhile, Iran says it gave notice to neighboring countries, claims that Washington has denied. South Korea's import price index saw a surge in March with inbound shipments of some tropical fruits at record highs. The tensions in the Middle East and unfavorable weather conditions are expected to continue driving up overseas oil and fruit prices here in Seoul. President Yoon has delivered a speech on the outcome of the April 10th election, saying that it was a crushing blow for his ruling People Power Party. The South Korean leader elaborated on how his administration would proceed over the next 3 years on its key policies. Our Oh Soo-young is on the line to fill us in on this speech. Soo-young, the president initially released a statement last week saying he humbly accepted the results and that he will focus on improving the economy and people's livelihoods. Now, what did he have to add this morning?
Hi, Yoon. So President Yoon's speech struck a very contrite tone as he said that he had tried but failed to deliver tangible changes to people's livelihoods over the past 2 years of his presidency. He said his administration had focused on making systematic improvements to the Korean economy through industrial policies to nurture new export markets, also make businesses more competitive, stabilize the housing market, as well as enable small investors to make more gains from financial markets. However, in the grand scheme of things, the president said the administration had failed to closely examine the difficulties faced by everyday people.
결국 아무리 국정의 방향이 옳고 좋은 정책을 수없이 추진한다 해도 국민들께서 실제 변화를 느끼지 못한다면 정부의 역할을 다하지 못한 것입니다.
He pledged to pay more attention to the voices of people struggling to make ends meet, saying that his administration must get closer to the people and listen to their difficulties on the ground.
국민께서 바라시는 변화가 무엇인지, 어떤 것이 국민과 나라를 위한 길인지 더 깊이 고민하고 살피겠습니다.
To this end, Yoon plans to continue a series of policy forums around the nation, which invite local citizens to discuss issues affecting their livelihoods. He's held a total of 24 of such meetings since January. Yoon also vowed to move ahead with his 3 major reforms for education, labor and pensions to overcome more fundamental systematic barriers to future growth for the Korean economy, as well as pushing for medical reform. In light of the public controversy over the rift between the government and junior doctors in carrying out systematic changes to medical delivery, President Yoon said the government will listen to rational opinions. So all in all, the president appears to have been saying that he was too consumed looking at the forest to actually take notice of the trees.
I see. And the president also previously mentioned that he might reform his administration in light of the election results. How might we see this proceed?
Well, President Yoon's speech comes ahead of an anticipated overhaul of most of his senior officials, many of whom resigned last week following the election results. His office has hinted that the first step of this impending reform would be the personnel overhaul. And leading up to the election, there had been criticism surrounding Yoon's close aides and his appointments for government positions, including the former ambassador to Australia, Lee Jong-suk. The administration has also been under fire for lacking in public communication. So Yoon is expected to first replace his chief of staff and prime minister with veteran politicians who can more skillfully handle diverse issues, as well as communication with various actors, including the opposition-held parliament. After that, Yoon's office is believed to be considering a cabinet reshuffle, as well as possibly changing the structure of the presidential office itself to become more communicative and receptive to public opinion.
That was our presidential office correspondent Oh Soo-young on the line. Thank you for your reporting. And after Iran's drone and missile attack on Israel over the weekend, Israel is reportedly considering painful retaliation that would avoid escalating into a full-scale war. Iran also claims it gave a warning before attacking Israel, but the U.S. says it did not get the warning and that Iran was aiming for significant damage. Shinayo with the details.
Israel's war cabinet met on Monday to discuss how to respond to a direct attack from Iran against the country overnight on Saturday. According to Israeli media outlet Channel 12, Israel is weighing up retaliation options that are intended to be painful to Iran, but without causing an all-out war in a way that coordinates with allies, including the U.S. Following the attack at the weekend, U.S. President Joe Biden warned that Washington would not participate in any counteroffensives launched against Iran and would only continue to assist in defending Israel after it helped to shoot down most of the missiles launched on Saturday alongside other allies. During the meeting, the Israeli cabinet reportedly agreed on a strong response to make it clear that Israel does not tolerate Iran's recent attacks.
We are considering our next steps, and this launch of so many missiles, cruise missiles, and drones into Israeli territory will be met with a response.
Meanwhile, Iran said it gave notice to neighboring countries and the U.S. days before it attacked Israel, but the U.S. denied the claim.
There was never any message to us or to anyone else on the time frame, the targets, or the type of response.
White House National Security Council spokesman John Kirby said that Washington is working with G7 countries on new multilateral sanctions to target Iran's missile programs. He added that G7 countries that had yet to designate the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organization are now considering doing so. Pentagon Press Secretary Patrick Ryder on Monday reiterated remarks made earlier by U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, emphasizing a desire to avoid escalation in tensions while affirming the commitment to protect its forces in the region and defend Israel. According to a report by CNN, Israel was set to launch a ground offensive in Gaza's southern city of Rafah, but the plans were paused after Iran's weekend attack. 신하영, Arirang News.
Washington says Pyongyang can genetically engineer biological military products, adding that the regime has a dedicated national-level offensive biological weapons program. According to an annual report issued by the U.S. State Department on Monday, in consultation with the Department of Defense, Department of Energy, and the Joint Chiefs of Staff, North Korea uses technology such as CRISPR to genetically engineer biological products. Last year's report indicated that the regime had at least a limited capability to genetically engineer biological products. The report further warned that the North has the capability to produce biological agents for military purposes and can create bacteria, viruses, and toxins that could be used as biological weapon agents. Over in Washington, D.C., South Korean and U.S. officials have been discussing the North Korean human rights situation. South Korea's foreign ministry said on Tuesday that the Director General for the ministry's Korean Peninsula Peace Regime, Chun Young-hee, met on Monday local time with Julie Turner, U.S. Special Envoy on North Korean human rights issues. The ministry added that Pyongyang's, quote, obsession with developing nuclear and missile capabilities is leading to violations of the basic human rights of the North's residents. The two sides agreed to continue their efforts to highlight the seriousness of the North's human rights situation. Japan has yet again made territorial claims over Dokdo Island in its annual foreign policy report. In its 2024 diplomatic blue book released on Tuesday, Tokyo renewed its claim that Dokdo is Japanese territory historically and under international law. South Korea responded with a strong protest against what it called Japan's repeated unfair territorial claims. Seoul's foreign ministry called for an immediate withdrawal of the claim, reiterating that the island is Korea's inherent territory. The Blue Book also disputed a South Korean Supreme Court ruling, which ordered Japanese firms to compensate South Korean victims of wartime forced labor during Japan's colonial rule. Geopolitical tensions in the Middle East and unfavorable weather conditions have driven up overseas oil prices and fruit prices at home in South Korea. This has led to a surge in imports for March, with inbound shipments of some tropical fruits at record highs. Moon Hye-ryun has more.
High international oil prices and domestic fruit prices drove up South Korea's imports in March. Preliminary data released by the Bank of Korea on Tuesday show that the country's import price index rose 0.4% compared to the month before. It's the third month in a row that an on-month increase has been recorded. By category, raw materials, including mining products, saw the biggest hike, with oil import prices jumping by 4% from February. Crude oil prices have surged due to heightened tensions in the Middle East, rising to nearly $85 a barrel in March and surpassing $90 earlier this month. A spokesperson from the central bank added that in light of the upward trend in oil prices, the import index for April could also see a rise. Recent data from the Korea Customs Service also showed that fruit imports saw a large jump last month, with the total import value of pineapples and mangoes being the highest ever on record. Pineapple imports came to nearly $8.7 million, while mango imports came to just over $24.7 million. Orange and banana imports too saw a significant rise, with the total value of inbound shipments for each reaching the highest level in nearly 5 years and 3 years respectively. This comes as unfavorable weather conditions led to a surge in domestic fruit prices over the past few months, prompting the government to pledge reduced import tariffs on a record number of different types of fruit. Meanwhile, the country's exports saw an on-month climb of 0.4% in March, which is the third straight month that the country's export price index has risen. Chemical goods as well as computing and electronic goods drove up exports, with higher prices for memory chips contributing greatly to this upward tick. The BOK explained that semiconductor prices saw an on-month rise of 1.3% and an on-year rise of 18.9%. 문혜련, Arirang News.
The U.S. government announced Monday that it will give Samsung Electronics up to $6.4 billion in grants to support the tech giant's chip-making investment in the U.S. It marks the third largest grant given under the U.S. CHIPS Act. Lee Seung-jae reports.
The U.S. government announced on Monday that it has decided to provide up to $6.4 billion in subsidies under the U.S. CHIPS Act to Samsung Electronics, which is investing in a high-tech semiconductor production facility in Taylor, Texas. In line with the grant announced by Washington, Samsung Electronics will invest $17 billion to expand the size and investment target of the semiconductor manufacturing plant under construction, with a total of approximately $45 billion in investment by 2030. Under the proposed investment in Taylor, the South Korean tech giants will construct a comprehensive advanced manufacturing cluster, including 2 leading-edge logic foundry fabrications, a research and development fab, and an advanced packaging facility. The $6.4 billion in subsidies given to Samsung Electronics is the third largest to date. American semiconductor company Intel is set to receive $8.5 billion, followed by Taiwan's TSMC, which will receive $6.6 billion. $39 billion worth of incentives were put aside under the terms of the U.S. CHIPS Act to encourage chip makers to build, expand, or improve semiconductor facilities in the U.S., with the Commerce Department looking to invest some $28 billion of the total sum in chip makers like Samsung Electronics. This comes as the Biden administration has been pushing for initiatives to drive up domestic chip manufacturing amid the U.S.-China rivalry. Investments being made by major chip makers, including Samsung, will put the U.S. on track to deliver on its plan to produce around 20% of the world's leading-edge logic chips by 2030. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The 10-year U.S. Treasury bond yields reached a 5-month high on Monday on the back of strong retail sales and increased tension in the Middle East. According to the trading platform TradeWeb, the benchmark 10-year Treasury yield reached 4.61%, up 0.09 percentage points from Friday. This comes as stronger than expected retail sales in March nudged inflation upward, while the U.S. Fed signaled a delay in interest cuts until later this year. Watchers also pointed to market fears of higher oil prices and supply chain issues following Iran's missile attack against Israel last weekend. Now to the latest in the standoff between the government and doctors. For the first time since the general election, the government has reiterated its commitment to expanding the medical school admission quota from next year, while trainee doctors are accusing the government of an abuse of power. Song Yoo-jin with the details.
It seems there's still a big hurdle to overcome in the standoff between the Korean government and trainee doctors regarding the expansion of the medical school admission quota. During Monday's Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures Headquarters meeting, Health Minister Cho Kyu-hong said the government's will for medical reform remains unchanged. This includes a planned increase in the medical school admission quota by 2,000 from next year to tackle the country's shortage of doctors in essential medical fields and rural regions.
We'd urge the medical community to stop their collective action and promptly engage in dialogue. We have a tight timeline, considering the college admission schedule for 2025.
The college admission guidelines for the 2025 academic year will be finalized next month, including the medical school quota. Making changes to the quota after that will be impossible. While standing firm on the expansion, the minister mentioned the government's openness to discussing rational and unified alternatives, echoing its previous stance, which hinted at the possibility of adjusting the scale of expansion. However, trainee doctors remain strongly opposed to the expansion. 1,360 trainee doctors who have submitted their resignation letters announced on Monday that they would file a complaint against Minister Cho and Second Vice Health Minister Bang Min-soo with the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials for alleged abuse of power and obstruction of the exercise of rights. They're saying the government misused its power to block hospitals from processing their resignation letters and force them to work against their will by issuing return-to-work orders. One of the 7 requests trainee doctors made to the government to return to work in February was the complete removal of the expansion plan. 송유진, Arirang News.
Nerve repair surgery is not only challenging and difficult, but it also takes a long time. South Korean researchers have since developed a patch that can securely reconnect a severed nerve when wrapped like a bandage around it. Chung Won-ju with more.
When a nerve in the body is severed in an accident, the two ends must be stitched together with a needle. Using thin threads with a diameter of 1 micrometer, even skilled microsurgery specialists take 15 to 20 minutes to stitch a single strand, making it a precise and challenging process. Although adhesives are being developed to connect severed nerves, there's still no method to mend them perfectly without suturing.
Suturing with thread depends heavily on the skill of the surgeon, and foreign substances persisting around or inside the nerve can affect nerve regeneration.
South Korean researchers have developed a patch that, when wrapped around like a bandage, securely connects the detached parts. The patch combines a soft polymer and a hydrogel with excellent adhesive properties to connect severed nerves smoothly. The research team used a hydrogel made of natural ingredients on the innermost layer of the triple-layered polymer, which upon contact with the nerve reacts with moisture to produce a strong adhesive force. An elastic polymer was used on the outer layer to replicate the physical properties of real nerves. The patch breaks down into small pieces after the nerves recover and does not affect the body because it is made of biocompatible material. When applied to severed nerves in mice, the area that used to take about 10 minutes to suture with a needle was found to be firmly connected in just 1 minute.
Regardless of who performs the procedure, surgery can be performed easily, simply and uniformly. We expect a good prognosis as surgery time reduction is significant.
The research team plans to conduct further studies to apply this patch not only to nerves but also to blood vessels and tendons. Chung Won-ju, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. Former U.S. President Donald Trump, who is once again running for the White House, began his unprecedented criminal trial on Monday in New York. On the first day of the trial, the court found difficulty in selecting jurors, as over half of the potential jurors were ruled out over concerns they couldn't be impartial. 60 out of 96 potential jurors quickly announced that they could not be impartial. Those who were left were then asked to answer 42 questions in the jury questionnaire, including what news media they read and whether they were supporters of Trump. Trump has been charged with falsifying business records to cover up a $130,000 payment made out to a former porn star, Stormy Daniels, just ahead of the 2016 election to buy her silence over an alleged sexual encounter in 2006. While Trump kept quiet during the entirety of the morning court proceedings, with yes being the only word he spoke, the former president spoke to reporters before entering court, saying the trial was nonsense and an assault on America. In Sydney, Australia, a 15-year-old boy has been arrested after at least 4 people, including a bishop, were stabbed at a church on Monday. Local police reported that none of those stabbed had life-threatening injuries. The stabbing happened during a Monday evening service at the Christ the Good Shepherd Church in Wakeley, a suburb of Sydney. Police were seen trying to control large crowds gathered at the church who demanded for the attacker to be brought outside. The church service was being live-streamed online and was still being broadcast while the bishop was stabbed giving a sermon. Monday's knife attack comes only 3 days after a mass stabbing in a Sydney mall killed 6 people. Extreme rainfall, flash floods and thunderstorms have left more than 60 people dead over the past 4 days in Afghanistan and Pakistan. Heavy flooding due to seasonal monsoon rains killed at least 33 and injured 27 others by Sunday in Afghanistan, while thunderstorms and heavy rain killed at least 36 people in Pakistan. A Taliban spokesperson for the State Ministry for Natural Disaster Management confirmed that almost 20 out of Afghanistan's 34 provinces were affected by extreme monsoon rains, with 600 houses heavily damaged and 200 livestock killed. In neighboring Pakistan, the country's southwest declared a state of emergency on Monday. Authorities in the country said most of the 36 deaths were farmers who were killed by lightning strikes and collapsed houses. Global automotive and energy company Tesla is planning to lay off more than 10% of its global workforce in order to cut costs. After reporting poor first-quarter sales, Tesla CEO Elon Musk circulated an email to Tesla staff on Sunday saying that while there was nothing he hated doing more, job cuts must happen. According to Tesla's latest annual report, the world's biggest automaker by market value had just over 140,000 employees globally last December, meaning layoffs could affect some 14,000 staff members. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. We had a cloudy and wet start to the day. Some of the central regions could see lingering showers through the afternoon. There could be less than 5 millimeters of rain with strong winds, but rain could be mixed with yellow dust. So make sure to have an umbrella with you even though rain is spotty. Northwesterly winds brought yellow dust into the country, boosting dust levels to bad in most parts of the country. And the level could even reach very bad during the day today. It will become much sunnier as the day goes on, but remember, a face mask is a must. After the highs should go up 1 to 5 degrees higher than yesterday. Seoul topping out at 19 degrees, Gwangju at 22 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Just when fine spring weather tries to make its comeback, yellow dust will make us choke in a dust cloud. Meanwhile, sunny skies stay with us as the warming trend continues through the end of the week. With that in mind, here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That's all we have for you at this hour. We'll bring you more updates at the same time tomorrow.